doctor's just looking at my dog. And his mother said, "Oh, that dog runs really fast." He says, "I can run really fast too." He says, "I can ride my bike, and I'm going to the new school." He was just so excited about that. So a bike, a fast dog, and new school all come together.
Well, let's get started.
Yes.
I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Newburyport School Committee for Tuesday, September 2nd. Mrs. Kennedy, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Menon?
Present.
Mr. Cole is not here. Ms. Sweeney?
Present.
Mayor Holliday?
Present.
Mr. DeCanta?
Present.
Ms. McCarthy?
Here.
Mr. Lukens?
Here.
Thank you. We have a quorum. Will you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Okay. This brings us to our first session of public comment. If there's anybody who would like to come forward and address the school committee, we invite you to do so now. State your name and your address, and as you know, we'll be using our new format. If we feel we can respond immediately to you, we will. Is there any public comment at this time? Yes.
Ralph Orlando, 4 William Hall Drive. It's a question, doesn't have to be answered tonight, can be answered perhaps at the bottom of the agenda of the next meeting. Someone responded to an internet section that I've set up, and I do post the school committee's agenda on that. At the bottom, it talks about executive session. A citizen responded to me or contacted me because they know I attend quite frequently. I know executive session is outside the confines of school committee. However, it was brought to my attention from by this particular individual indicating from the Secretary of State's office that there are to be minutes kept from those, and no one seems to know, myself included, where you can find them.
I will be happy to answer that. The executive sessions are kept separate, sealed.
So you have to request to see them?
You can't see them. They're executive session minutes, and that's part of the reason why they're executive session is because they involve litigation, personnel, contract negotiations, and they're things that are not sometimes there are things that are in executive sessions for the moment or for a period of time, and then those minutes can ultimately be released. But at this point, the executive session minutes that sessions that we have gone into, everyone that I can think of that I've been part of, Dr. Orlando, has involved potential litigation, contract negotiations, or I think those are pretty much the two primary areas, or potentially a personnel issue. And those will never be released to the public.
Is that correct?
Correct.
Because the comments from the quotes from the legal issues identified led one to believe otherwise. So I'll take that for a statement right now.
Well, I suppose we could, in some situations, if a situation has been resolved, redact everything that relates to an individual student, any identifying information,
right,
and even the school. So I'm not sure what benefit it would be to get a report that's just all blacked out.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
If it would be helpful, I can read the Attorney General's open meeting law guide covering executive session meeting minutes.
Go ahead.
If you'd like to, go ahead, sure.
So public bodies are not required to disclose the minutes, notes, or other materials used in an executive session where the disclosure of these records may defeat the lawful purposes of the executive session. So that is basically a summary. It goes on, once disclosure would no longer defeat the purposes of the executive session, minutes and other records from that executive session must be disclosed unless they're within an exemption to the public records law or the attorney-client privilege applies. and there's some additional language, so.
Thank you, Mr. Lucan. Any other public comment at this time? Hearing none, we're going to move on. We don't have any warrants this evening. We do not, as yet, we received the minutes from last week's meeting this afternoon, so we'll vote on those the next time. Which brings us right to the building project update. And I'm going to turn that over to the superintendent, the mayor, and Mr. Lucan.
Would you like to begin?
Certainly be happy to begin. Let's start with the Bresnahan. The parent nights were held last week, Tuesday and Wednesday, with a wonderful turnout where parents were, sat through a presentation by the administrative staff regarding arrival, dismissal, overall general rules of the program, and just a brief orientation. And then we're divided up into groups to take a tour of the building, and there were a lot of positive response on the part of parents. On Thursday night, we had the community open house, and were overwhelmed by, I would gather, over 500 people arrived on site. And we just didn't have enough staff on hand to give the individual tours that we started, because so many people kept coming into the building, and so we just sort of positioned ourselves in various places to answer questions. And I think overwhelmingly the response of the community was so very, very positive. I was also especially pleased to see so many adults come who do not have children in the schools. Ran into several people who were in the first class of the Belleville, and things like that, and just really wanted to come and pretty much see their tax dollars at work. And again, the response was overwhelmingly positive. So we are in very good shape at the Bresnahan School for opening day on Thursday. Buses arrived on scene today and reviewed arrival and dismissal. And our largest fire truck, our ladder truck, came and pulled around the building just to be sure everything was fine, and that went very well. The one piece that we had hoped would have started last Monday was the rubberized surface for the playground. And unfortunately, they drove with their whole team from Chicago and arrived on site this morning. So that could be a little challenging for children, not being able to go out and use this beautiful new playground. We had trouble during the open house getting people off of the structures because it wasn't safe for kids to be climbing all over there. But I guess the neighborhoods have been using the playgrounds already, so which is great. I mean, that's what it's for. It's community playgrounds. So we just, really, we're going to have to put like yellow tape around them if they're not ready for Thursday. But this process goes down pretty quickly, and I would think that they'd be 5 days, 6 days, they'd be ready for use. So overall, the one thing that I, ask of everybody is that on the 9th, a week from today, is the primary, and that there'll be voting at the new school. And this will be a challenge because children will have been in school for 3 days, and we're still learning the drop-off pickup, and just ask everyone to have patience as people come in to vote. There'll be police detail, there'll be extra staff there'll be staff inside the building, parent volunteers, and voting will happen for wards 5 and 6 in the library. But we're still concerned that people will try to come down where the buses come to get into the school. And access for voting is on North Atkinson. We are going to do a reverse 911 to wards 5 and 6 so that they know to come in North Atkinson. And teachers will try and leave as many spaces up front for the voters. Our next election will be professional development on November 4th, won't be a concern. And then we'll have the special election for the reuse of the balance of some of the Bresnahan money for fields, and so that will be a special election, so we'll have that on the 9th. But then we will be moving the voting over to the Senior Community Center, and the construction fence was going up today there to separate the construction site from the Bresnahan School today. So we anticipate breaking ground in probably 2 to 3 weeks. I'll know more after the pre-construction meeting this week. So everything is, I think, moving along very, very well at Bresnahan. At Knockmullen, I have to say that I was incredibly pleased doing a walkthrough today. Had only wished that the site looked the way it does today last week. But huge work was done over the holiday weekend. The classrooms are in good shape, and the section of the building that we've had to that will segregate from the students is the auditorium. People arrived with a team of 4 to start putting in seats to the auditorium, so that was encouraging that that's starting today. But that auditorium will be off limits, as well as the gym, the locker rooms, the woodworking art room, and the robotics lab throughout this week and probably weekend, and then we'll reassess where we are if we can open up that site. Site work is still happening around the building. Things are looking much better. Central office has moved back to their new office or redesigned office space or renovated office space. So we're still having a little bit of trouble with some of the wireless, and they believe part of it has to do with the last Wednesday. Unfortunately, National Grid was putting in a new pipe to the assisted living in the Ridler property next to the hospital, and unfortunately, they cut the fiber to the high school and the Knockmullen school. But it's not National Grid's issue because they did the dig safe, and the fiber was, if you look at the asphalt, and here is the ground level, this is where dig safe would come up. The wire, which was supposed to be a temporary, maybe you guys remember this was supposed to be a temporary installment for fiber for the high school when it was redone, and it comes right out of the asphalt. No conduits. So it was an all-night repair.
Because you get punched.
So it was an all-night repair, and at the tune of $25,000 to repair this. So we're looking at insurance and trying to, sort of figure out what our options are in terms of covering this incident. But I know that things are back up. They're just not as strong as they should be in terms of the wireless piece. But cafeteria's in good shape, the classrooms are in good shape, the courtyard's been cleaned, the front of the building's coming together. So overall, we're going to be ready for Thursday, except for those rooms. The other thing that I would like to say is that every time anybody runs into a custodian, they worked unbelievably hard this summer. Moving equipment back, cleaning, re-cleaning, cleaning again after construction happened. The work that this staff has done has just been incredible, and absolutely incredible.
I would suggest that maybe they get thank you notes from the school committee.
Yes.
The other person who has just been phenomenal is Steve Bergholm.
Oh, yes.
He has just been, no matter what the issue, Steve will help to problem solve it, and he's been there every step of the way, every hour of the day and night, and he's just done a marvelous job.
And Don Skane, for that matter, too.
And his crew, they've been
And his
working around
crew,
the clock.
yeah, trying to get all the technology up and running, too.
I'm afraid I'm going to miss someone. That's the only.
I mean, over the holiday weekend, I will tell you, they were all in. They were all in, and the night the fiber went down, Don Skane was there until probably close to 3 a.m. Back in the next day, I saw him at 8:30. That's the kind of work that people have been doing. It's really been amazing.
And he was smiling this morning, on top of all of this, so, yeah.
Just with all the stuff that's been going on, I sort of lost track of it, and I just wondered if I could get an update on the whole playground skate park thing. Where is that right now?
I'm meeting with the Friends of the Skate Park on Thursday afternoon because of the amount of site work that needed to be finished at Knockmullen, there was a request made by the principals to David Hall and his generosity for coming in to work on the skate park or install the playground, was to just wait a little bit until we could finish up some of the site work. There was just too much equipment, in the yard.
So, but it's sort of, it's settled out, it's just a matter of implementing?
Correct.
Is that what?
Yes.
Okay, so.
Yes.
So the playground has a site, and I know that David is coming in to do work to prep the
Right.
site.
And we have to, I think DigSafe has already been called in. I'm not 100% sure on that. And one of the hydrants has to be moved a little bit in order to install the playground. But all of the pieces of the playground that we're going to reuse from the Brez
Right, they're there.
are on site.
Yeah, they're on site.
And so that leaves that expansion piece
Okay, for
open
conversations,
for,
good.
us to work with the Friends of the Skate
Good.
Park in terms of that expansion. And the repairs, I understand, are complete at the skate park that were supposed to happen this summer.
Good, and so they should be probably close to reopening if.
They are. There were kids there all
Great.
weekend.
Great, I appreciate how hard everybody worked to sort of make that happen. I know that it sort of came up in various ways, but I appreciate that.
Do you have any idea as to when the auditorium and gym, in terms of big spaces for big school meetings, will be available?
The auditorium will be ready next week. The stage is, I think the electrician told me today it was like 98% in terms of, all the new, sound lights and all. So they have to finish a little bit of painting in the auditorium. The carpet, those squares, I actually was expecting them to be down today, but, they weren't. So those are going to be, those are in and will be rolled out, and then the new seats go in, and then there has to be lights that go up and down the aisle, so, and I understand that person was supposed to be on site tomorrow.
They started the install today of down in the lower section of actually the arms. You can go in and you can see that there are arms up. The chairs aren't in there yet, but they've started with the arms and placing them. The tile floor in the front that's below the stage, that's all in. The stage itself needs to be sanded and taken care of and painted, but they've made a lot of progress in there, and it's actually, I think they'll give it back to us sooner than we expected.
The other thing about the auditorium that we, Susan and the principal from Knockmullen, we talked about that. It would be really nice to do an event where we have like an hour of just short performances by kid groups, and then bring the community in so that they could see Knockmullen, since that's they haven't had an opportunity to do that. So we're working to try and figure out a schedule to do that, and we could bring the Joppa dancers who went to Scotland in to do something, and the kids could just do a couple jazz band performances, whatever.
I think the last iteration of the Terezin troupe was in Poland and Germany within the last year.
Are they back too? I mean, could we pull them
Yeah,
together?
you could probably
too?
give Ann a call and see what she's.
Could you do that, Bruce?
Yeah, sure.
Sure, and just reach out and see if they could do just a little, 10-minute segment of that. That would be nice, because it'd be nice to get a variety of performances from the students and showcase the new auditorium.
The last time I was at the school building committee, there was talk of some things that were going to probably get pushed to October. Can you share what those? I know I think the gym was going to be Columbus Day, finished in Columbus.
No,
There were some things that everything will be done.
The gym will, there may be there's going to be punch list work for a while, but I believe we should have that entire area back. The plan right now is to have it completed on Sunday. It's available to us on Monday. That was the meeting that I had today. Now, could something happen? Could there be a problem between now and then? Sure. But that is, as of today, that's the plan.
No, I'm just responding
I
to.
think other than the punch list, I think the one major piece that was planned for later would be the paving.
Yes.
So,
Yes, that's true. That's true.
so I think on the list of items, I think paving had an October place.
There was something I knew that was
Right.
significant, but wouldn't affect school opening, but I just wondered I didn't remember what it was. So.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anything else? Thank you.
I got nothing. It looks like we're, it's going to get done, so.
Next item on the agenda is new staff, and I'm going to turn this over to the superintendent.
Thank you. I included in your packet a list of our new hires, and you can see that we really hired a little bit of everybody this year. We hired custodians, a receptionist, we hired team coordinators, lots of teachers. I shouldn't say lots of teachers. We hired actually a smaller number of teachers this year than we did last year, and that, as you know, that was one of my goals, was to begin to reduce staff turnover. And I hope that this is the beginning of a trend where we'll see less and less of that. We still have a couple of positions that are open. We have our math interventionist that's still open. We also have an ABA teacher at the high school that is still open. There is I believe a final round of interviews tomorrow, and there may or may not be a recommendation made to me for the ABA teacher. But I think we've done really well. I have been impressed with the quality of the staff. I have met with every new hire and had an opportunity to talk with all of them. I'm very pleased with the folks that we have hired this year.
Susan, did some of the people, because I noticed one teacher here I know, move from one school to the next?
Yes, we've had some shifts where we've had some openings.
So they're not really new hires?
They're not
though.
really new hires.
So how many are those?
We had 2 of those, I believe. 2.
Tracy.
Yeah, Tracy and Jackie
Okay.
Mercano.
We have another, there was an IA that moved
That's
into a
true.
teaching
That's right.
position.
That's right, 3.
Susan,
And-
can I just add about
Sure.
the math interventionist? I just want everybody to know that, that position, the principals worked really hard to get that position filled, and then we ran it, and they had actually recommended someone for hire. We ran into a licensure issue with that person, so we had to reopen the position.
What
So
position is that?
it's the math interventionist
Okay.
at the elementary. So we hope to have that filled within the month, but, we need to start again because of that situation.
Can I just clarify, I'm not going to use any names, but the bottom of this paper, it looks like somebody has a job and a half.
No, it's actually a part-time instructional assistant and also working in our copy center.
And then there's a blank for the other instructional assistant.
So-
So
Is that a blank?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so this
That's-
person is .5, and then
That's
there's an
correct.
open instructional assistant.
That's correct. And again, today, I actually hired an IA at Mullen and a lunch monitor at Bresnahan that are not even listed here. It was this afternoon that I hired them and met them, so.
One of the advantages of having been around the community for a while, finally, is that I get to see names that I know of local community people who are really, really good people being hired for positions in the school system. So I see a couple of names that I know and have very, very high regard for. So I would say, just based on that, you've made some very good hires.
Speaking of, Mr. Lukens.
So is it correct to say then that there are 4 open positions right now? The math interventionist at the Bresnahan, the ABA teacher at the high school, the pre-K, K, BEST, and the two instructional assistants, pre-K, K, and then the Mullen instructional assistant.
I expect that I will have recommendations on, that you're accurate. I expect I should have recommendations on 2 of those 4 tomorrow.
Okay, so that's the 2 that you were just talking
Yes.
about. Okay.
But I think we have worked, I like the system that we have in place in terms of the hiring and the recommendations. I still want to increase when we have the opportunities to do demonstration lessons, I want to continue to grow that because I think that's very important. I also think that when we have hired more clerical positions, we've also tried to provide practical tasks for the candidates to perform so that we're really getting a clear picture of the skill set of the folks that we're hiring. And we're trying to continue to grow that so that we're getting the very best people that we can. Pleased with that.
To go back a minute, how many lunch periods are there at the Bresnan?
I
Three.
think, no, I actually think there's going to be 4. I think they're going to break it down to 4, if I recall correctly, just because of the recess
Right.
lunchroom time. I think there's 4. The last I knew, there was going to be 4.
So when does the first person eat? It's
Starting about
7:30?
10:35 in the morning. It's you know, it's similar to
hopefully
high
they'll-
schools.
They'll have an afternoon break then for snack.
And again, you know, we also remember that we have a number of differing times that children start and children end because of frequent pay, so. I'm happy to I can get you that detailed information.
No, that's all right. I just, 'cause I guess my thought was, how many children will be eating in the cafeteria at the same period of time?
I think they had presented to the parents no more than 4 grades. And so that might be, or 4 classes.
4
not
classes,
grades,
4
sorry.
classes,
Yeah,
yeah.
4
So
grades.
probably about 100 kids at a time, 125, somewhere around there. So,
And how many lunchroom monitors do we have for those youngsters?
I think there are 4 or 5, but I want to double check on that.
I'm just curious as to capacity and, any other questions? Mr. Paul?
Yeah, I just had a question about one of these positions. I'm not understanding the campus assistant. I don't think I've ever seen that before.
That
Under high school.
Yeah, that's been around for how long? Before I came.
Yeah, I want to say maybe 3 years now, from the time that we lost the other administrator at the high school. So this person does a lot of the managerial kind of, as an administrative assistant kind of work to the administrators at the high school office.
Okay, so just office stuff, or is there any monitoring too?
There's
There is,
some
yep.
monitoring.
Yep,
Okay.
there's lunch duty,
Lunch.
there's attendance, there's attendance
Okay,
responsibilities.
all right.
Supports Mike Testa in
Okay.
some of the disciplinary work that
They're
needs to
not
happen.
part of the management team. They're,
No, it's
The support.
it's an assistant kind of
Mhm,
position.
okay.
All right, thank you.
This person took on, I think, supplies and materials last year. You know, keeping the inventory and ordering and making sure that that kind of thing was done.
Anything further? Thank you. We're going to move on to the professional development calendar.
Just by way of introduction, one of the things I want to say is that when Angela and I talked about this, one of the things that we wanted to do is we wanted to, Mr. Cole?
Oh, thank you, thank you.
Do you
Yep.
need another one?
This,
Oh, there's two.
this type. That we wanted to really look at having a plan for the whole year, knowing that we needed to be flexible, but really being able to look at it as a leadership team and being planful and looking what are the responsibilities that everybody had to complete during the course of the year. And so that's one of the reasons why we wanted to have a visual for this. So I'll turn it over to Angela a bit.
Thank you. Yeah, this was a nice process this year when the administrative team came together to do some of our retreat work this summer. One of the first things we identified were professional development needs at every building. And then we started to look at what was common in the district, what the professional development needs were district-wide. And then we wanted to be as efficient as we possibly could be. So we identified any available time that we have in the district to use for professional development. All of the principals agreed that because we have 2 faculty meetings a month, one of them would be dedicated to professional development, and one could be used for school business. And then we looked at all of our release days, and then we looked at our full professional development days as well. And we really tried to budget the time for the things that we need to address this year. You'll see in a couple of spots that there are some to be determined And basically, those are there because we need to see how far we get with something else before we decide what would be happening on that day. You're going to see some areas that say, CAB or department meeting work, and all of those will be curriculum-focused for either a grade level or for a particular content area at middle school and high school. We had some overarching focuses around some work around literacy, around technology, and certainly around math, because we've been talking about some of the good work that's happening in math. We did a lot of work district-wide last year on building district-determined measures, or you'll see here abbreviated as DDMs, and that is the newest aspect of the teacher evaluation system. And but these are student measures to determine growth. And the way that they are associated with the teacher evaluation system is to really look at teacher impact on student growth. So that's a little bit different than looking at student achievement scores. What we really are looking at is where a student enters and if they are growing in the time that they spend with a particular teacher. So the teachers have all worked collaboratively on building those last year and determining how we've got first year full implementation this year. We piloted a few areas last year. So we wanted to allow enough time for teachers to look at student work together, to examine those assessments, to make sure the measures are playing out the way they hoped that they would. And, our major goal around this is that these measures are going to be informative to us around our instruction and our curriculum. And so we wanted to dedicate time to that. We wanted to dedicate more time this year to building curriculum vertically. We've been talking about that, and we started to do some of that work last year, and we're continuing it, and we've actually dedicated what days will be vertical work days, and so that we can plan and organize that well.
I also know that there has been, some concern out there based on the calendar and the number of early release days. So I thought it was important to be able to publish this early and to be able to use this as a communication tool with parents so that they also know what we're doing on those days, and they know that the time is being spent wisely based on work that we will be doing with their children. So I thought that was an important piece too. And it was also a great exercise for us, I think, as a leadership team, to sort of sit down, and there was a lot of work put into this to make sure that that we had covered everything that we needed to do, and there was some, push me, pull you types of conversations that we had. And I think it was a great exercise for us as a group to be able to do it and to say, all right, this is what we're committing to for the year.
I think we wanted to balance, too. We wanted to balance, we've got some mandates that we have to put in place. We've got the DDM as a mandate. We've got the MKEA, as you see here, that is a new assessment being put in place by the Department of Ed for kindergarten students. And that will probably expand and move into grades 1 and 2 in the future. But, our pilot in the district this year is for kindergarten. We had identified an area of phonics work that needed to be done at kindergarten and first grade. Those teachers had a full day of professional development today around that, but we've got to be able to follow that up and make sure that's in place well. And then we have the implementation of engagement work, math as well. So, we wanted to make sure that we were considering the ongoing work, that we were balancing district priorities with what some of the mandates on us are, and that we weren't biting off too much, so that it would be manageable for all involved.
Mayor?
Just a question. I mean, I understand this is a full year schedule, but with a new technology, new security systems at Bresnahan and Knockmullen, I see a little bit of 1/3 IAs getting safety training, so I assume that's not that. So could you or Susan speak to the kind of training that's been done in the schools in terms of people understanding the new technology, new security measures?
It's been very limited because we're still
not-
waiting, they're not functional yet. So we're waiting for that. I think the way that it'll end up being a little bit different in each building, but it's really going to be, our tech integrators, I think, are going to play a major role in both buildings in terms of how to roll that out. And I think it's going to be, we have talked about the fact that we would really like to, again, and it ties into when the new website rolls out, that we would like to have a section of the website that really is instructional videos. So for example, here are, 6 short videos as to the things that you can do with your Surface Pro 3, and really trying to create a library. And as teachers learn to use these devices, we're going to be encouraging them to put up their own videos. So we'd really like to build a library and like to have, but there does need to be ongoing professional development. I'm going to guess that many teachers are going to figure out a lot of things on their own because they want to go, it's new and they're going to want to go home and play with it. And I think you're going to have some natural professional development just in conversations and just in teachers showing one another what they've created. So it will be ongoing throughout the year.
We've also, we have a group of teachers, several teachers from each building who have come forward or have been identified by their principals as teachers who are kind of super users of technology already. And we are doing more professional development with them so that we can expand our capacity in each building of go-to people. So we started some of that work this summer around Baseline Edge, which is a new technology we're bringing in around the evaluation system and around student analytics. And we're training our CAB members, our Curriculum Advisory Board teacher leaders, in the student analytics component as well, because that is directly associated with all this work around district-determined measures. So I think that we're trying to put other structures in place that are going to allow us to address at least the new technology. Now, the safety training and all of those kinds of things will probably manage during faculty meetings and whatnot once we're all in place. But as far as using the technology in hand, we had a week-long technology professional development that ran this summer without the devices. We were so hoping we'd have at least a couple in hand that we could show them. But what the facilitators did was show them all that they can do with not only this tool, but using Google Docs, because we put that in place last year, and some of the other tools we have. That was very well attended. And they started additional professional development today. So the super users were all trained in the teacher evaluation component of Baseline Edge. And with the exception of the Mullen and the NOC, because of the technology issues we had today, the high school and the Bresnahan super users did that professional development already today. So, we're going to go with it. We're going to have to go with the flow a little bit here at the beginning until we have the things that we need to conduct the PD.
Okay. Can you tell me a little bit of how Baseline Edge works for the teacher evaluation? I mean, what is in it that's going to streamline part of the process, I guess?
Yeah, it's beautiful. Well, it's beautiful. Well, just for streamlining, that's really what it does. I think it's going to make the process much easier for everybody involved, and the fact that we're going to have portable devices is going to make that much easier as well. But it's a very intuitive software package that allows the evaluator and the teacher to be in constant communication electronically. So if one person places evidence, it's got a like a Pinterest-like board where teachers can put their evidence up and administrators can add evidence to it. All of the forms that we've used in the district around the evaluation system have all been put into the system electronically. I spent a good 3 days last week, getting all of the dates in and aligned with the timeline that we've agreed with the teachers union around this on all of those forms, so that when anybody goes in, everything makes sense. It's talking the Newburyport language. Evaluators can just,
So you can fill it right out on this device,
Absolutely.
and there's no paper.
we're hoping
Unless
to
you want
move
it.
away from paper. This year,
That's-
we'll certainly be accepting paper because we have a transition period, but we're hoping to move away from paper. I think when teachers see how easy it is to use, they're not going to feel so inclined to need the paper.
At some point, though, we will have to make the rule that.
Right, you will.
Yeah,
'cause-
right. Yeah, there's some. The binders
Right,
will
the
still be a big deal. But it's, you know, we did the training with the administrators first, and then we did the training with the super users, and I haven't had a chance to talk to any of them today, to see, those who did the training, to see what the teacher reaction was. But I think people are going to like it. It's got a nice, clean dashboard that makes sense. One of the frustrations we had when we were using X2 was that if a teacher put something up there, or if an administrator put something up there, there was no way to know unless you went and looked. You know, this automatically sends an email that says, you know, something's been put there.
You've got mail.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
basically.
So it's an easy system to use. It's very visual. One of the pieces that we love about the student analytic component is as you're entering various sources of data, and then you're analyzing that data by different types of sorts, it sorts by the student's picture. So right away you have a visual of, these are my kids that really struggled with this particular assessment, or these are my kids that are really, you know, at the high end. So it's very visual. It's the same way for the teachers in the evaluation system. The evidence goes up that way. It's organized by the standards right away. It's just
A teacher
clean.
can see, a teacher can see, oh, I don't have any evidence in this area. This is, I need to, you know, that's one thing I need to look at. So it's going to make the process, I think, not only more streamlined, but it's going to take a lot less effort on everyone's part, because the you know, teachers and administrators had to worry about timing out before. That's not a concern with this system. Things are automatically saved, so you don't lose anything. And one of the constant complaints I heard when I first arrived here was the number of times that administrators and teachers lost data because it would time out. So that won't be a concern with the system. So I just think it's going to make the whole process much smoother.
The company's been very responsive to listening to individual needs of the districts they work with.
Can I just ask who else uses it? Why did we choose this one? And
Yeah, I believe, was it, I can't tell you how many districts. I want to say it's a minimum of 50, somewhere between 50 and 80 in Massachusetts.
Reading uses it. I mean,
Yeah.
I brought this up a couple budget sessions ago,
Yeah.
and Reading uses Baseline Edge Gold. And, yeah, it's a great product.
It's a great product.
Mr. Decanter?
I'd like to go back to the big picture for a second. I certainly appreciate this spreadsheet, all of the information it has. When I heard this mentioned in the same breath as website, my little red flag started popping up. We need to make sure that if we're going to post this, before we post it, we translate it from EduBabble into common day English.
Yeah, I wasn't thinking that we would send this home.
Okay.
Yeah.
No,
No.
I just want to make sure, because we've done this, and said, well, we've posted it.
Absolutely.
And therefore assume that it's in a condition that
No.
people can read and understand.
Yeah, this is really, this is a calendar that's really more for the leadership team and to give you an overview.
And I like it, and I think this is awesome work. One of the things I think we should maybe take a look at as we build a more descriptive version of this is mention where we have outside facilitators or speakers, so that people also understand that there's a lot that's going on here. And of course, a little blurb at the bottom, thanking the Swayze Foundation and everybody else that supports our professional development in our district.
That's a good idea.
Some of that work has already begun, Nick. As a matter of fact, the middle school sent me theirs today, and I was going to bring it, and I forgot it, where they have taken just the middle school section. They've put the date, the activity, who the facilitator will be, and it's got more detail. And it also breaks out, when you see CAB, it means it could be this, or this. These would be the types of professional development activities that would happen if you see that in this section. So I agree. I think that is great work, and they've already got a jump start on that.
I think parents need to see this. I think it's going to do an awful lot to help calm the waters around our early release date. But I think we need to present it in a way that they can read it and understand.
Right.
One of the things that I think will be a natural outgrowth here is, as we sort of expand on this, that we'll come up with the right template that everybody will, that each school is going to want to use to communicate out to parents, and to be able to do, as Angela said, who are the presenters, what are we doing, which groups are doing it, is it what grade, to provide that type of detail. But I think we'll find the right template that will work, so that if you're a third grade parent at Bresnahan and you move to Mullen next year, and you see sort of the same template, oh, okay, this is what they're doing for professional development this year.
I think that's true. The other thing that I would like to see added to it as we go forward is pictures and testimonials from the teachers of the professional development, saying, hey, yeah, I was so excited that we had the chance to do this, and that the teacher is saying, and this is the way it affects your kids' learning. That's when you begin to take it away from edubabble into real experience that parents can understand and say, oh, this is something I want to support for my kids. This makes my kids' learning experience that much better, and it's well worth the price of having to find a babysitter or whatever else they do to cover that half day.
That's a good suggestion.
Yeah,
Mr. Lucas?
I just wanted to make a real quick comment. I agree with Nick and the superintendent. I think, getting this information out is really important, and I would just reinforce one of the comments that Mr. DeCander made about making it real for parents in terms of the impact of these activities on the students, because I think it's really important to not only communicate what the teachers are doing with this time, but to spend more time articulating the impact of those activities on the kids.
Good focus.
Yep.
Mr. Menon?
Yeah, I had two questions, and one of them I think will sort of introduce the subject, and then I assume we're going to hear more about it under curriculum update. I really appreciated seeing the trainings on signs of suicide, because I worry about those issues and those dynamics that kids are struggling with. And I'm not going to make any assumptions, but one of the issues that has been, I think, a topic I know that they've talked a lot about at the middle school has to do with executive function issues. Those issues that these kids challenge with cut so broadly and deeply that, if we're working to inform teachers about how to identify those issues and work with those issues, you're addressing every curriculum area, every area of life functioning. And I have sat through a meeting here in which I've heard a report on how the middle school is dealing with that was at variance with my own experience and the experience of my child in dealing with his executive function challenges. So I kind of wonder whether there's more going on around that, and that there isn't a need to do some professional development around that or not. I know that there's only so much you can do, and there's only so much time and so much money, but I'm hard-pressed to think of a bigger bang for your buck than to really be looking at some of those issues that kids are struggling with. So it's just sort of a comment, and it will be something that I'll be wanting to hear more about, I think, over the course of the year, because I do think it cuts so broadly. And I think the other question I have, and again, this may be more curriculum or the curriculum committee, I don't know, but to what extent is the professional development that's happening at the high school reflect some of the recommendations that we got from the NEASC report? and how are those recommendations? I've been spending a lot of time with it, and there's a lot to it. So I know that the report itself has some problems coherently as to how it's put together, but, once you sort of get with what does or doesn't agree, there's a lot of points that are, I think, very critical points, very important points. So is there anything that's happening at the high school that reflects some of those findings and some of those recommendations in professional development? And then I guess, because I think a number of those issues were identified as curriculum issues that that just doesn't tie together in some places. I just wondered, if that doesn't come under professional development, how will we be hearing about those recommendations and which ones seem to be more critical? So I don't know, again, if that's the curriculum committee. I don't know where that's going to go, but traditionally we've sort of gotten the report and it goes where the strategic plans go on that shelf. And, so.
I'll respond to that.
Great.
We're going to have Mike and the co-chairs come and present to the school committee, because I think you need to hear from them directly. The report was held up a bit in terms of when we received the report. I don't think that they've had any time yet to even discuss the findings as a faculty, because it came so late. So I think that's really, they're going to do that, and then I think they need to come here and talk with you about what they see as the next steps. And again, I think it's really important in any NEASC report that the school prioritize and determine whether or not the recommendations made are valid. Because it's really up to the school to say, yes, all right, they hit the nail on the head on this one, but we don't think that's a priority. But I think it's important that you hear from the co-chairs and from the principal first.
I couldn't agree with you more, but if we're going to be rejecting a lot of those recommendations, it's going to be a hard sell to be laying out that kind of money for a group to come in whose recommendations we don't think really reflect what's going on.
Again, I haven't had the conversation with Mr. Parent yet about where, and I don't think the school has had it yet, because we're just opening, and I think we need to give them some time. Typically, my experience has been that in however many recommendations that you have, a school will typically prioritize and say, you know what, here are the things that we want to focus on in the report. These two we really don't think we're going to focus on. I haven't seen wholesale rejection of recommendations in a NEASC. That hasn't been my experience. Usually there's a couple of things where they say, yeah, we don't think that's relevant. But
well, it just helps me to hear what the process is going to be, because normally for me, I would be thinking it's really efficient if there's some training issues, then that becomes part of professional development, and it doesn't seem like the timing was good.
The timing was off.
Yeah.
Clearly, the timing was off.
And one thing I can add to that, Bruce, was if you look at this calendar, you'll see in several places at the high school that it's been left open-ended with department meetings, and that's designed purposefully. So that NEASC did come up as part of the conversation when we were talking with the high school around this, that they knew that they were going to have to dive into the NEASC report and some of the recommendations, and that they needed to leave some space that would allow them to do that.
Good. Thank you.
Angela, can I just ask one question, please? What do we do for IA training? How do we train our instructional assistants?
Today, we started some of that today. They worked with Dr. D today around interactions with students, and they did some safety training today. They were their day was broken into 3 components. It was around safety training on how you handle a child in crisis properly, around data, how you look at data and understand what the data is telling us, how you help the teacher gather data around a child that you may be monitoring, and then behavior interventions today. So unfortunately, we only have our instructional assistants with us for our full professional development days.
That was what
They're not here during the release days, and so then we will provide provide additional training on November 4th.
What about curriculum training?
Curriculum training, we've done that. We haven't done it this year, but it's not on this calendar, but we have done that at times, particularly when there's going to be a new curriculum. So they will be involved in some of the curriculum training that will happen during the day. But it's really difficult because they're not with us during faculty meetings and they're
Right.
not with us on the release days.
Right.
So we do have to catch up with them. And oftentimes, it's a one-on-one with the teacher that they're working with. They collaborate with the teacher, and the teacher gives them, access the lead as to what they'd like to see them do. But it's hard.
So it's
hard.
more a one-on-one thing. I mean, we're
Not
starting a
always.
new phonics program, we're starting a new math program. So how do they learn how to teach
They were-
those?
Well, they really won't be teaching
Well,
those per se. They'll be assisting
Right.
in the instruction. But they were involved today in the phonics training because that is an age group where that was really essential. They were not involved in the math work that happened today. The math work did happen today, but they were involved in other things. So some of the IAs were broken out because of the age group they work with. So some were in the phonics training, some were in this training. And we really have to look at where we address their needs the best. But I think it's a good question about the math program and how we're going to handle that.
I know they don't teach
That may be something
it,
that Liz does on November 4,
Okay.
With the IAs.
and I know they don't teach it, but they're doing student goals and, collaborating, so they have to know something about the goals of the programs. I've always been
I
a little
agree.
concerned about the IA training.
They're really doing reinforcement type activities.
Right, I know that, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think
Anything
that's
else?
a good point.
Miss Smith, could I possibly have that extra copy?
You certainly may.
Any other questions about the professional development calendar? I think this is an incredible amount of work that's done, and just, maybe with the little tweakings that Mr. Decanter was talking about, this is very nice to see a whole year program, and I agree with Mr. Lukens. This will give impetus to our professional development because parents can see the topics that are being talked about. So, any other question about the calendar? Curriculum update.
Okay. Before I get into the curriculum update, I did just want to tell you that there was some great professional development this summer, too. And I just wanted to give you a brief update on that. We had 2 different vertical math professional development. We had one at the end of June that was a week long. This was a result of their work here, and any of you are welcome to take a look at that. It was very successful, and I think it was a time that teachers felt that they had the opportunity to really talk about math and work together, discussing math. There was a great appreciation for the different levels that work together. When we first pulled this together, and you thought, well, we're going to have preschool teachers with, AP Calc teachers, all in the same room and trying to figure out how they were going to feed one another.
Exciting.
And it was really exciting. It was some amazing work. And the reflections on the teachers' part were just so positive and so excited about what they got to start. We made sure that we incorporated some time for them to come back together on November 4th and continue some of that good work that they started this summer. And then Liz Kinsley had 2 days where she opened it up again for teachers who maybe couldn't attend the week-long to become more familiar with some of the Engaged New York materials and the thinking behind the direction we're heading in math. That was also really well attended. I think the first workshop had about 27 teachers in it, and then the second one, I think, had 26. So, they were very well attended. We had the Great Technology Week that was really good. We had some excellent training on trauma and the impact that trauma has on the brain and learning. That was also very well attended. We had 2 sessions of that running because we had filled one, so we opened a second session of it also this summer. So there was some really good professional development that happened this summer, and the teachers who participated felt that it was all really positive. So I just wanted you to know about that too.
Can I just ask a question since you brought up brain trauma? We're still doing the pre-concussion baseline testing?
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to be sure that because I know that was a grant-funded program, and I wanted to be sure that's, because it has become such a really important topic in terms of concussions and injury during sports. I just want to be sure that we were doing that still.
When we were doing the professional development last week, all the students were coming in. We were in the library here at the high school, and they kept asking, where am I supposed to be, for them? So, right.
I heard a lot of athletes that would get their
Yeah,
baseline.
there was a lot of traffic coming in and out around that, so. Okay, I'm certainly not going to go through all of this, but I gave you more information than what we're going to cover tonight, but I did want you to have it in front of you. So I'm just going to give you a brief overview of what is in this packet that I've given you. I gave you part of an article that was written by Tony Wagner. He's from Harvard Graduate School of Education. And the article is really about rethinking rigor. It's something that we've talked about before here, but I wanted you to have this in front of you because when we talk about the Common Core standards and we talk about some of the work that we're doing in the district, we keep talking about rigor. And I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page on how we define rigor. Because, schools have changed. And really, when we're talking, moving away from the more traditional idea of what rigor might be and thinking about just our high-level coursework, we really need to think about it in terms of skills that are needed to be successful in the 21st century. And this article talks a lot about that, the types of things that are needed and how we prepare our students for the world that they're going to live in. The type of rigor that's described in this article is also very well aligned with what we are seeing described in the Common Core state standards. And so, this, we need to have a cohesiveness in a vertical way from our students starting pre-K right through 12 to ensure that we're instilling that kind of rigor into the curriculum. So I gave you that so that you would have that piece. I know one of the other things that has come up a couple of times here at this table is what are we doing about writing in the district? So we are starting some professional development around writing, but I've given you an overview narrative of a basic strategic plan for writing professional development for this year in the district, and we're going to be working with Dr. Leslie Laud and on the self-regulated strategy development approach to writing. And this is, there's some bibliography information about the people that will be involved in that professional development. And then on page 3 and 4 of this section of the handout are the goals and outcomes for this professional development. We're just starting this year. I suspect we will continue this through next year. This was one of the things we were going to delve into a little deeper, and when we started to do the professional development calendar for the year, realized maybe it might be too much to go too far with this year. So we backed off a little bit, and we're going to implement some of it this year, and then we'll continue with more of that work next year. On the next page, you're going to see a theory of action template that was the result of the work that the Writing Advisory Board did this year. And the way this is set up is if you look at the first column, it says, if we do the following, then in the second column, then we will impact the core in these ways, and then the third column, and we will reach our student achievement goals in these ways. So this is what was handed in to me at the end of their study this year. And then we started to do some goal setting for writing. So some of the work that you saw, the goals and objectives on the page before, came directly from the input of the people that were involved on the Writing Advisory Committee. Emily Russin has put together a graphic organizer for you on the next page that really highlights K-8 writing in Newburyport and what the components are, what kind of writing conventions, what kind of time and quantity of writing should be done, what are the types and purposes for writing, how do we assess the writing, how we impact writing to read, student engagement, and then what a writer's workshop structure is, because these are all of the things that we're addressing within writing. This communication will be going home to parents along with a letter at the beginning of the year so that parents can help start to understand what the writing system looks like in the district. And then on the next page, you're going to see.
Can I just ask
Sure.
you one question about that?
Mhm.
Time and quantity, 45 minutes daily, is that in a writer's workshop? Is that directed instruction? Is it in the content area?
Yes,
Oh, great.
all of those.
Excellent. Good answer. That's fine.
Work should be part of it.
Yeah. And then we also provided a little overview of Newburyport district literacy approach for pre-K through 8 as well. So as you can see on the front page here, this really kind of overviews how to use a literacy block if you're teaching kindergarten through grade 5. On the back of this page is an overview of adolescent literacy that really, we have it highlighted for grades 6 through 8, but these concepts carry right through high school. High school is a different structure because we're course-driven in high school, and that's why I don't have that here. But this gives you, and this will also go home with the letter to parents so that they can see this. The letter that's going to go home to parents around math and the implementation of the Engaged New York modules are on the next page. I wanted to provide you with that letter because it's been completed. This is going to go home next week. We wanted to make sure that we had all of our students updated in X2 before we did sent this message home to ensure that everybody was going to get it. This gives a brief overview for the parents around the implementation, talks about the work that's happened to help prepare the teachers, talks about the shifts from where we were to where we're going in this letter. And then I've also included the breakout for every grade level that we'll be implementing the Engaged New York modules here. And what this breakout does is it talks about all of the standards that are addressed, the highlights of those major standards for each grade level. And then the last page of that gives you just kind of at a glance how you can look at where the various concepts start to cross over. And they're all color-coded. So, you know, for example, fractions are in pink. And you see that fractions just briefly get introduced in 3rd grade, and then there's more time spent on fractions in 4th grade, and there's intensive focus by 5th grade. So this is just to help you start to see how those concepts build, how they work in a vertical way, how the curriculum scaffolds as we move through it. So this is just a lot of information for you to have, and I know you're going to want to take some time to digest it, but these are some major focus areas in curriculum that we're going to be focusing on this year. And I just wanted you to have the overview so that as we have ongoing conversations throughout the year, you have the foundation to work from.
Mr. Decanter?
This is very exciting material, and I feel for parents who are going to be getting all these things and are going to watch me do it all. It's great stuff, and I encourage them all to take the time to do it. I have a very quick question on the math curriculum, Angela.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Grade 8 focuses linear algebra and linear functions.
Mm-hmm.
How does that compare to the algebra program we've been running in grade 8 for selected students in past years?
It's going to change that. I think it's going to shift this. This is going to address most of the concepts that we've been running in our kind of honors algebra class at 8th grade. I know we don't call it that. We just call it our 8th grade algebra class. But, the other standards that we have didn't address algebra as heavily in 8th grade for everyone, and they now do. So that was one of the things that came out of the summer work in the vertical meeting, is the impact, once we're in full implementation of the Common Core standards and using our new resources, it's going to have a huge impact on course development for the high school too. And we're going to have to take a look at that algebra class. We decided to leave everything in place this year, because this is a transition year. And one of the recommendations that I've made to all the teachers as we implement the Engage New York resources or modules is that they should take copious notes about how things are going, how students are responding, what modifications we might need to make. Because really, one of the beauties of being a part of a collaborative for the Common Core state standards is that everybody who's part of the collaborative are contributing to the resources that are available to anyone in the collaborative. And so, that's how we really came upon this. This was work that New York had done, but it's an open source, just like all of the model curriculum units that Massachusetts are developing are open source for anybody else in the collaborative. And it's a new way of thinking about approaching education. So when you have an open source, as you know, you can adopt it as it is, you can adapt it to make it work for you, or you can just take bits and pieces from it. So this year, we're adopting, because until we adopt, we don't really know what we love about it, what we think we'd like to change about it. So we're really going to work this year to implement with fidelity and take lots of notes as we go along, have ongoing conversations throughout the year collaboratively, and then we'll take a look at how we're going to approach next year.
So what will that mean for this year's 8th grade students that are taking this as opposed to the honors
They're
track?
going to be...
Are they going to be tested at the end of the year, and based upon that, recommended whether or not they can go into more advanced work at the high school?
Yeah, just as we would do any other year. We predict that they're going to be further along, because they're going to have a much stronger foundation to be building from. But we'll see, until we're fully implemented.
Ms. McCarthy?
Yes, I have just a blanket question about our Common Core state standards for math. So this letter to the parents, while realigning our curriculum maps over the past 2 years, it became necessary for teachers to supplement the math programs we were using so that they would meet the increased rigorous demands of the new standards. So do you think we were teaching below the Common Core standards?
At some grade levels, yes. But we were following the Massachusetts standards, and the Massachusetts math standards at certain grade levels were less rigorous than what the Common Core state standards are, considerably.
Considerably across the board, or do you think at certain grade levels?
Certain grade levels. Not across the board, but I would say at certain grade levels. We've identified some of those grade levels and, are working hard to make sure that we're providing the kinds of supports that the students are going to need as we move forward implementing these standards. because it's a considerable change at certain levels.
The word on the street, which is only just the word on the street,
Yeah.
is that Newburyport was teaching above the Common Core standards.
I wouldn't agree with that.
Okay.
I wouldn't agree with that.
Not across the board, certainly.
Not across the board. I mean, and that is in no way saying that our teachers weren't doing a great job and that they were, teaching to our current curriculum, but the Massachusetts state standards were not as rigorous as what the Common Core are.
Mr. Lukens?
2 questions. One is, will all of the Engage New York modules across all grades pre-K through 8 be implemented this year? So that we're not going to pick and choose modules and supplement those with the curriculum that we had in place. We're going full bore.
We're going full board with a couple of exceptions. We've identified a couple of areas at middle school, a couple of the modules that we're not particularly excited about. And so in those cases, we may be supplementing with resources that we know are stronger in teaching that particular concept. We're not going to deviate from what the Common Core is saying, but we may use additional resources to teach a particular concept. I think that we're going to be implementing with fidelity right through grade 6. I think it's going to be at grade 7 particularly that we're looking at. Grade 8 looks pretty good. But grade 7 we have some questions about. When you delve in and you delve in deep, you get more information. But we've asked teachers not to pull in a lot of the other stuff this year, to really try to do this with fidelity because it's the only way we're going to know.
Yep.
It's the only way that we're going to know about the resources. So that's our goal.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And then the second question is then, since we're going to be administering the MCAS for at least 1 year, and since the MCAS isn't fully aligned with the Common Core as Engage New York is, are there any potential disconnects in terms of the curriculum that we're going to be administering in particular grades and the material that we'll expect students to master for the MCAS exams in those grades?
I can't be certain of that. I'm hoping, in the conversations around MCAS versus Park, and the forums that I attended last year, MCAS keeps saying that by this year they will be aligned to Common Core, and so that's my hope. I think all school districts across the state are counting on that was supposed to happen by this year. So, we can only move forward with that information and hope that that will be the case. I don't think our students will be hurt by this. If we're aligning our curriculum to standards that are more rigorous, even if the MCAS test is not fully aligned to the Common Core, I don't think that will hinder our students at all.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Angela, may I just ask you, I know there are mandates in our professional development program that you mentioned. The DDMs are a mandate. The kindergarten assessment is a mandate. You're rolling out writing, math. What are the budgetary implications of any of this? Or what do we need to know?
That's a great question, because we're already starting to keep track of the budgetary implications for all of it.
Right.
Because I know that was a question that came up repeatedly during the budget process last year. So we've started to keep track of those numbers even already. And I think you'll see some significant budgetary impacts as we move into budget season next year. As far as Engage New York goes, not huge budgetary impacts right now because it's open source. So we've got copying expenses.
There's a lot of copying.
A lot of copying expense, but a fraction of the money that was budgeted for the investigations materials that were consumables. So when you compare the two, it's a huge savings, which has allowed us to buy the manipulatives that were needed associated with the program. So we've really just, used the money in a different way and been able to do that for this. But as we move forward and we start thinking about writing, we didn't put science on the PD calendar, as you saw, but next year science will be a major focus, but you can only tackle so much at one time. Science will have significant budgetary impact as soon as we start that transition, because the resources that we're using for science are not well aligned to the next generation science standards. I've already started having conversation with vendors around science materials and collecting information so that when we get enough information, then we'll put a group of educators together to start evaluating resources and whatnot, but we're not quite there yet, so.
And what is the level of the Swayze grant?
For this year, forgive me, Swayze, if I give the wrong number, about 90?
Right around there.
That's what I was gonna say.
About 90,000.
So that hasn't changed significantly in the past couple of years,
No,
has it?
they've been wonderful.
They are
They have
unbelievable.
been unbelievable.
Well, that was my point, that-
Yeah, very generous, very generous. I think this year was just about 90. It may have been a little bit more, it might have been 92.
Well, I was just, the level has remained stable, and that's just such a wonderful
It's not only
thing.
stable, they've increased many years. I mean, this year we were a little lower than last year, because last year they were really able to provide us with some significant, they funded some of our significant needs last year. And, but this year they came pretty close to it.
But, so you're all set with all of this for this year? With
The,
funding and?
The writing, we've written the literacy partnership grant for, so that's where we're getting the funding to do that.
And how much was that?
Using that grant.
Allotment?
I think we got 28,000 on that grant this year.
Okay.
So that will go towards the writing. We've repurposed some of the budgeted money around the math to be able to cover the Engage New York right now. But as we're thinking forward, we are.
The other comment that I want to make that I think is really an important aspect of all of this is that getting down our curricular process on paper is really helpful to new teachers when they come on board to understand what are the expectations in writing, what are the expectations, what am I supposed to be doing for reading, and to have that on paper. But it's also really important for parents to understand what we're doing and for the community to understand. So that's been one of the reasons why I think it's critical that we continue to put to paper exactly what we're doing so that the community is informed, and that it allows for the communication that we've been talking about. We know that's a goal of the school committee. It's a goal of the leadership team too, to be able to communicate effectively so that parents understand what are we doing instructionally. And I think that this is a giant leap forward in having that kind of communication to parents and to our new staff. So it's tough to be a brand new teacher and come in, and it's great when you can read something and say, all right, now I understand what I'm supposed to be doing. So, not that we don't have other supports in place, but it's still nice to be able to go back and to see it in print.
And to keep them updated.
Yes.
I mean, it's not that we haven't ever had it
Right.
in writing, but just to keep it updated.
Keep it
and
flowing.
to say that it's growing and flowing. I mean, one of the things that happened in this work with the teachers this summer is that they started mapping the math curriculum with the standards from the year before the standard that they're teaching and the standard for the year after. So now they're over a 3-year span, so that they know what they should be able to anticipate as the students come into the grade level that they're teaching, and how they need to prepare the students for the grade level that they're going to. So it really is a nice document that gives the teachers a vertical view of even just year before, year after. And it was nice work.
Mr. Decanter?
I was struck by a column here in the materials that you gave us on math. It says, in the letter directed to parents, it says, what can you do? And when I combine that with your comment about how you're asking the teachers to take copious notes, are we in any way looking to gather feedback from parents as to what they're seeing from their kids and with their kids as part of our assessment of this program?
I think that's a really good point.
I certainly think we always want feedback.
Maybe something we can put on one of our website
Surveys.
Right. That would be good. Something good here.
The more we can do to increase communication.
Right. And
Just a survey even.
Right.
But I think more than anything, make parents aware of, as they're doing that, to take notes of what's happening with the kids and shoot the teacher an email and have the teacher collect. Then shoot the teacher an email, right? Don't put words in my.
Yeah, I think
But,
feedback is always
some way
important.
in which we can begin to gather the feedback of what.
Great, yeah.
Because clearly the success of this curriculum, any curriculum, is the partnership between what happens at the schools and the practice that the students get
At home.
at home. And I think we've made a big enough step. I'm excited about all of this, but I think we need to get parents excited about it and excited about them being part of the overall evaluation. Not to think, oh, well, my kid has been singled out as a guinea pig, because it's not a guinea pig, it's a well-proven curriculum that we're just seeing how well it fits for us, but getting their feedback, I think, will be very important.
I agree.
Thank you. Food services.
Just as an introduction, at our, I believe it was our last Finance Committee, and those of you who are on the Finance Committee can jump in and correct me if I'm wrong, but we had talked about the options that we needed to look at moving forward. And as you know, we have, I believe we were about $77,000 in the red for last year in terms of our food service. And we talked about that one of the things that we would be doing is we would be gathering information from other districts as to see what they're doing, that we had some options as to whether or not we wanted to go out to bid, or we wanted to have our own in-house program, or we wanted to continue to stay with Chartwell's and see if they couldn't begin to turn things around. You know, I will just make the statement, and we all know the history, that when the guidelines changed, that we saw a significant loss in revenue based on the guidelines and what Chartwell's was allowed to serve based on the nutritional values. So what I have passed out to you is just to give you a brief update for some of the things that Sharon Seal and Chartwell's are planning to do, and this was very brief, but she just wanted you to know, and I'm not going to read the whole thing to you, but these are some of the activities that they have planned to try to increase student purchases, as well as to work with our employees to make sure that we are running the most efficient type of program. So obviously, we haven't served a lunch yet this year, so I really can't give you a lot of an update, but this was as much as I did want you to know. They're having invite a guest to come to school at Bresnahan. I think they're really looking at increasing participation at Bresnahan because it's a brand.
It was touched on last year, but I don't know if they were going to try to do breakfast in the classroom at all at Bresnahan.
I don't think they've made any decision at that. I think that's an option that's on the table, but I don't think any decision has been made yet.
Okay. because I think that's another avenue. If, again, you're looking for some revenue, that may be an option and maybe provide some convenience to parents and families and kids. So it'll be interesting to see what else the food service comes up with. And again, depending on what the changes are at Knockmole and if there's any other options resulting from maybe greater ability to serve certain entrees or selections, that might be helpful too.
Thank you. Mr. Lukens?
So when we had a discussion with Chartwell's here over the course of a couple of meetings at the end of last year, there were a number of things that they presented as either options or things that they were committing to doing this year, and some of these things were on the list. And they also outlined their assumptions in terms of revenue generation and expenses. So I would ask in the future when we get updates from Chartwell's on how things are going, I'd like to see those things kept as a baseline so we can track the progress in terms of what they said they would do this year and what they're actually doing. And then in terms of the financials, you know, how our actual performance is doing relative to the assumptions that they had gave to us. Because I thought both the list of things that they were committing to doing as well as the assumptions behind their financial projections, I personally thought were potentially overly optimistic. And so I want to make sure that we track those and don't lose sight of them, because I think ultimately, you know, the way that I'll measure their performance is against those as a baseline this year.
Any other comment about food services? Subcommittee reports. Did any subcommittee meet between, nobody met this week, so we're all, Mr. Menon?
Policy, I had committed to trying to get a letter out before school opens from the school committee. The letter is almost completely drafted. Nick should get a copy of it tonight or tomorrow morning. Once he's had a chance to take a look at it, we'll...
Audrey's on your committee as well.
That's right. Well, I had offered to do it with Nick. I didn't draft Audrey to do it, but you're more than welcome to. Yeah, no, I wasn't excluding her.
No, I just...
So Nick and I should, hopefully, I will make every effort to get it to him. I'm having internet problems, so I'll make every effort to get it to him tonight or tomorrow morning, and then we'll turn it around and get it out to you guys. So that, but it probably should go out under your signature from the school committee, I would think, or the mayor's, either one. Doesn't. But it is
And the purpose
that.
of the letter is to introduce us as a committee.
It introduces sort of the work of the committee. It introduces the areas that we're focusing on, and then, as per Dr. O's good recommendation last week, it talks about where we are with how people can get in touch with us. You know, again, it's in progress. We're still working that out, but there are ways for people to get in touch with us, and we will make sure that they know that.
The other thing, the open house schedules for all of the schools is up and posted. I didn't know if any of us wanted to represent the school committee at any of those open houses. I will be at the one at the high school on the 18th. Didn't know if anyone else wanted to represent the school committee at any of the others.
I'll take a look at the dates. I'll certainly be happy to attend. Let me just look at the dates.
Thank you. I think that's another way we're out and about and people are seeing us and teachers know we care about what they're doing, so I think that's an important one. We will be having an executive session this evening for the purpose of contract negotiations. We will not be coming back out into the public. So we have a roll call vote, Mrs. Kennedy?
Ms. Sweeney?
Yes.
Mr. Cole?
Yes.
Mr. Zapanta?
Yes?
Mr. Holliday?
Yes?
Mr. Lukens?
Yes.
Ms. McCarthy?
Yes.
Yes.
Could I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Unanimous? there anyway.